Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, hi, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers. We're always here together, usually, except for Keith's going to take off in about 3 weeks on a well-earned vacation, and I'll either be here solo or I'll find somebody to sit in, which is awfully hard to do for Keith. In fact, we've never had to do it, right?
I don't know.
You've been here for literally every single show that this podcast has recorded.
Have I?
Yes.
Wow. That's kind of sad. That means I don't take nearly enough time off.
We're up to what, 660. This is the 663rd episode. I've missed like at least 5 or 6 over time, just from vacation type stuff and not being available. So you've held down the fort, your fair share for sure. Okay. So last week we started on our position group look at the roster with the quarterback position. We found that to be fairly satisfactory as far as the next couple of years is concerned. Sam Darnold, if he plays up to expectations or even exceeds those, I think is an opportunity for him. We're in pretty good hands, plus a really good prospect on the back end in Jalen Milroe that we can develop and hopefully emerges. And if that happens, this franchise is in pretty good shape for quite a while. On the running back room, just general overall observations is that it's a pretty decent room, and it's going to benefit from the scheme quite a bit, and the blocking and the dedication that Mike McDonald has to marrying up the running game with the passing game. And it should operate, in theory, a lot better than last year. Now, overall, how does it rank? How is the offensive line going to perform? All those are kind of question marks, but the one thing that you aren't going to question, I think, is the talent level in the running back room and what they can bring to the table. And at least that part we know, I believe, is going to be pretty solid. What is your overall kind of view of the running back room and overall expectations on what you think is going to happen?
Honestly, I like our running back room. I think that there's a lot of talent there. And, Ken Walker's great. We're going to do all of that. Zach Charbonnet is, I still believe, an absolutely underrated player. And yeah, then you add in a very talented rookie, and there's a lot to like here. A lot of variable skill sets. And I think overall, like, the talent level is it's kind of the deepest position group on the roster, because I think all 3 guys, and even Kenny McIntosh, who in my head is the 4th guy, and maybe even Helani, who's the 5th guy, could all come in and have success in the scheme. So, yeah, there's a lot of talent, a lot of depth. It's a great position group overall.
I agree with all of that. At the end of the show, I think it'd be kind of interesting to talk about our expectations on how many backs they carry. And we'll go through that after we kind of talk about everybody, because I think that's going to be really interesting. Okay, so let's kind of set this thing up as to where we were at last year. So last year was a disjointed, unsophisticated, uncoordinated job by our offensive coordinator, Brian Grubb. Seattle ranked 29th in rushing attempts, so near the bottom of the league. 17th overall in yards per attempt, not bad, middle of the road. Still ranked 28th in rushing yards overall, averaging 4.2 as a group. You'd like to see that number go up this year. I talked, a couple weeks ago about if we can get to 2,000 yards rushing on near was it 500 attempts, an average 4.4 yards per carry, we're going to be really in pretty decent shape, like fringy top 10 offensive rushing game performance for this team, which would really allow this offense to operate smoothly and as constructed. What are your thoughts about how we did last year and if there's any correlation as to what we can expect this year?
I don't think there's any correlation. Though the offense was just such a mess schematically. And you said that the Seahawks were middle of the road in rushing attempts. I find that so hard to
Not
believe.
rushing attempts. We were 29th in rushing attempts, but we were
Okay.
More respectable in yards per attempt, 17th.
Okay. I misheard you, and I was like, I don't have that right in front of me, and I'm like, I got to find that because there's no way that's right.
Rushing attempts and rushing yards, 28th though.
Yeah. And so yeah, I mean they never ran the ball. They just didn't. Teams didn't respect it, and when they tried to, it was always like in an obvious situation, and it didn't go anywhere. Like this, they were not a good running team, but it had so much to do with the coaching and the coaching staff and all of that, and the offensive line didn't help either because they were weak up the middle. Like the center of the line was the weak point, and they were trying to run inside zone. So
and we played from behind quite a bit just because we couldn't convert on third downs and fourth down opportunities and red zone stuff. And I put that, more in Geno's bucket. Now they made it hard for Geno because they threw all the time, but one of the reasons they threw all the time is because we were playing from behind, and the conversion rate on those sorts of plays was less than optimal. And so
they threw all the time even when they were ahead.
Yes, that's very true. Very true.
So
expectations this year as far as what we can think of success looking like.
I think that you're going to be looking at this team should be instead of 29th in rushing attempts, they should be 12th. And that alone is going to it's going to be a big difference in terms of you run the ball more effectively, you convert more on third downs, and I just think that overall there's going to be a lot more success as a running team. The other thing they're going to be able to do, which they didn't do any of last year, was use play action. Because if you run the ball, then you're going to be able to, run play action more and get guys in space with a chance to run after the catch, and because the linebackers have pulled up. But you have to run the ball to make that happen. And teams didn't respect Seattle's ability to run the ball last year, in part because they knew if it looked like it was going to be a run, it was a run, because there was no play action. And yeah, I mean, it was a
mess.
It was such a mess. It was just such a mess.
Yeah. I think there's even more hope than just 12th overall in rushing attempts, rushing yards, success rate, etc. If you go look at the Kubiak offenses in Minnesota in 2021, I believe, and then last year in New Orleans, they were top 10 in rushing attempts and rushing yards overall, featuring Dalvin Cook in Minnesota, Kamara in New Orleans, among others. Now, and I think that we're going to get there. Now, you mentioned no correlation. I agree with that. And I think that alone points to the idea that we're going to have some success here. It's just a matter of how much. And if you take a look at the talent, which we are going to do right now, I don't think there's any reason why we can't be a top 10 rushing team. I think the commitment is going to be there. I think the coaching is going to be there. The scheme and the commitment from the top down. And yeah, my expectations are pretty high in that regard. Now, overall offense with Sam Darnold, I think it's going to be top 10-ish, just because I think everything's going to come together. That, we didn't really talk about correlation with the quarterback and the scheme as a whole, but I would say, man, you take Darnold's skill set with this running back room and the commitment and how it all kind of comes together. I think that the ceiling is actually pretty high, and a lot higher, I think, than they're probably looked at nationally and anyway. And
I would agree
locally,
with that.
I think that we probably haven't spent enough time talking about it yet, and we will as time goes on, especially as we get into camp, as to just how good this offense actually could be. There's a lot of skill players here that give them a really nice opportunity. So we'll see. Let's talk about the players, Keith. Ken Walker.
Yeah. Ken Walker is your guy with, home run hitting speed. I mean, that's who he is. He's a guy that doesn't necessarily look for contact, looks for lanes to cut back and bounce things outside and turn nothing into something that way. And he's got the speed and acceleration to do it. The one knock on Walker is he has not been able to stay healthy the last couple of years. And that's been unfortunate because, he's had some opportunities in this scheme with the outside zone, where that's what you're kind of expected to do, is to just glide down the line until somebody gets a seal block, and then you put your foot in the ground and go. And nobody goes faster than Ken Walker. And when that's working well and he's not dealing with guys in his face as soon as he gets the football, I think he's just going to explode. He's just going to have a monster year, assuming he stays healthy. And that's a big assumption at this point.
So you mentioned the health. Now, there's been missed games and missed practices and so forth in training camp from Ken since his rookie season. Last year, weeks 2 and 3, he was out with an oblique. The year before, he had an oblique injury that kept him out 2 games as well. The final 5 weeks, he missed 4 of the last 5 games completely. 4 of those were starts by Charbonnet with an ankle injury. When he was available and in and starting, he averaged 16.1 touches per game, even in a diminished offense. And Charbonnet averaged 5.1. So he was clearly the chosen one to be the number 1 back, and they wanted to feed him and feature him. Mm-hmm. And I want to bring that up a little later too when we talk about Charbonnet. If you look at Clint Kubiak, offensive coordinating the New Orleans Saints in 2024, Alvin Kamara averaged 21.1 touches per game. So Ken Walker's averaged 16.1 over his entire career, including last year. Kamara averaged 21.1 just last year, combined for 143 catches as well over 2 years and over 1,000 yards receiving. I'm not exactly sure if they use Ken exactly the same way as Kamara, but that kind of points to the optimization that Ken could get to, I think, if he's healthy and they feature him as much as I think they might. Now, if you go look at 2021, when Kubiak was in Minnesota, Dalvin Cook averaged 21.8 touches per game. So that's kind of where I think that you're looking for Ken. That's a lot of opportunity for him. That's more than he's had in prior seasons by an average of 5 touches a game. And that's a combination of receiving and rushing attempts.
Well, and part of that, one of the things that I would look at with that is who else was on the roster at running back for those teams. And honestly, the running back depth for both of them wasn't great.
It's true. Right. But they were still
good.
top 10 offenses or rushing offenses overall.
Yes.
I mean, that points to the talent at the top, but you're right in that Seattle's depth and running back room is, I think, could rival almost any team in the NFL right now.
Yeah, I mean, they're loaded there. So it might be that we see a lot more touches going to running backs, but maybe Walker doesn't get more of them. Maybe they split those extra carries between him and Charbonnet, and both of them end up with more than their career averages, but not those numbers that like Kamara got last year.
Well, let's talk about that, and let's talk about Zach Charbonnet. So Charbonnet, we both liked him in his running style as it fit last year's scheme, kind of more of a gap guy, a power guy. It took a little bit longer to get going, but once he got going, he was very effective, powered through the line, hard to bring down in the second level. All those attributes he's got, and we both kind of lean towards that style. It'll be interesting to see how we feel about how Ken Walker operates in this offense in this scheme and what we prefer to have, because I think Ken Walker brings that diversity of skill set. Now, he's not afraid to kind of run it up into in between the tackles, but he is best when he bounces outside, and he is best when they stretch that out and he can one cut and go. And I think
that's what the scheme is. That's what the scheme is right. stretching everybody wide. And then as soon as you get one gap that's sealed off, you cut and you run up through it. And when he does that, he's going to be a threat to go the distance, like every time. Whereas Charbonnet's not. But
that's, the stretch zone historically with Clint Kubiak and across the league, more or less, operates at about a 60 to 62% clip. And then they run it, varying schemes off of that. They do some gap stuff. They do some power stuff. It's not the only thing that they do, the wide zone stuff. So there are opportunities for Zach Charbonnet to still find some success here. I just don't know.
I think Zach Charbonnet can still have success in this scheme because, he's not going to put his foot in the ground and go and get, 40 yards because there's no one that can catch him. He's going to put his foot in the ground and go, and linebackers are going to get to him 6 yards down the field, and he's going to break tackles and drag people and get yards style. That way. It's a different style. The chance of a home run is less, but honestly, on a play in, play out basis, his style where he runs through tackles will always be successful. There's always reasons to like the guys that can do that. And I got a couple stats that kind of show this.
I have one too.
Okay, so I was like looking at rushing attempts per broken tackle, right? Charbonnet last year was 8th in the league. He broke a tackle every 11 rushing attempts. Walker was surprisingly good at that, as he was 11th in the league. And elusive, so only, though. Yes.
Slippery.
But then the yards after contact per attempt, right? You're looking at with these, and you kind of expect, Kenneth Walker was 26th in the league. That's down there kind of a bit, but that's not who he is. He's not a yards after contact kind of guy. Charbonnet was not as good at this as I thought. He was 16th in the league at 2.2 yards after contact per rushing attempt. I was expecting that to be better. I think there's room for improvement there for him, but but then again, at the same time, like you're looking at the difference between 16th at Charbonnet at 2.2 and the top player in the league, which are Tank Bigsby and Derrick Henry, were 2.8. So, it's
at
not.
Least he's in the conversation.
He is in the conversation now. Well, I wish I had this broken down more by game, because I wonder because there were certainly games where Charbonnet was just dominating, and those were games when he started and got a bunch of rushing attempts. But those were 3 games last year, because they just didn't run the ball enough. It's just so frustrating.
So one of the things that I was going to mention was specifically tapped into the gap runs versus zone. So Charbonnet has been better at gap, as we could imagine, finishing with 5.1 yards per attempt on gap plays compared to 3.5 per attempt on zone. Now, this is with last year's blocking and blocking scheme.
So we're
the
talking
reverse is true for Walker.
Inside zone versus outside zone too.
Yeah. Walker averages 4.4 yards per attempt, career zone runs compared to 4.0 on gap runs. So there is some subtle differences there that I think do show up and may favor the reason that I mentioned the splits earlier, where Ken averages 16.1 last, overall. And when Ken plays, Charbonnet averages 5.1. My question to you, and you kind of alluded to it, you said, well, those splits may change, like the proportion may kind of stay the same, but they should both increase a little bit. Do you think that that's true overall in that? Do you think if Ken Walker stays healthy, Clint Kubiak kind of rides him a little bit, like gives him more opportunity, gets him up to 21 point, whatever attempts or touches overall per game, and Charbonnet kind of is playing second fiddle when he's not starting or when Ken's not injured, and really kind of has limited opportunities, and you kind of feel bad for the kid because he's proven that he can actually do this, but those opportunities, there's only so many carries and touches per game.
True. I would say that because of Walker's health history, that while it's going to be tempting to ride him because he is, every time he gets the ball, there's a chance he could take it to the house, right? Because he's got that incredible speed. But like I said, it's going to be tempting to just keep giving him the ball. But I think that it would be wise to mix Charbonnet in more often because you need Walker healthy, and you don't keep him healthy by, giving him the rock, 20 plus times a game. He couldn't stay healthy when it was 16. Right.
That is the nice thing about Zach Charbonnet is he's definitely a workhorse and available. Now, the only thing to me that could possibly change this dynamic. Now, we had talked a little bit about Kenny McIntosh, and Ken's kind of got a diverse skill set as well, but not as athletic and dynamic as Ken Walker. He's 6 foot 205, but ran like a 4.55 40 or 4.6 40 out of college. He shows or plays a little bit faster than that, as well as he's a little tougher than you would assume he would be at that size. He showed some grit and some determination last year that I didn't know that he had. He missed 2023 with some injuries and didn't take any snaps at all. So last year he had 31 carries, 172 yards, 3 receptions. That was the limit of his usage. I would say, based on the competition between himself and Damian Martinez, that number is probably going to stay roughly in the same ballpark or same proportion to where he was last year. But I will really want to talk about Damian Martinez and how he factors into this equation. Is he just a guy that initially is going to be on the sideline, no attempts, maybe not even suit up on Sundays as part of the guys that suit up, and he's just kind of waiting for an opportunity? Or is he's so good in training camp they have to figure out a way to get him on the field? And does he then make a guy like Zach Charbonnet look over his shoulder and wonder what's going on?
I don't know.
And why did we draft him? Is my question.
Why did we draft him?
We already had a Zach Charbonnet on the roster. Why did you draft Damian Martinez in 2025 instead of waiting?
Because he was a 7th round draft pick. We're not talking about a guy who you're not drafting a 2nd round or using a high pick on him. He was sitting there in the 7th round, so why not? But yeah, I mean, 6 foot, 217 pounds, but 40-yard dash, 4.51. That's not, elite. It's not bad by any means. It's good, but it's not elite. His 10-yard split of 1.56 is good, but not elite. And why was he available in the 7th round? Like, there's right now, Zach Charbonnet does not need to be looking over his shoulder. The person who needs to be looking over his shoulder is Kenny McIntosh. And until he proves otherwise, I wouldn't be worried about it.
Yeah. Fair. Did you want to add anything about Kenny McIntosh, or do you want to talk about their undrafted guy?
Well, we should talk about McIntosh and Holani, because both of them are back and both of them played last year. McIntosh is, I mean, you mentioned he's undersized compared to what the Seahawks like, but ran hard. Was willing to, put his head down and dive into tiny holes where he knew he was going to get clobbered, and did a lot of little things, played special teams. I mean, that's who he is. Holani I don't understand this, but coming out of training camp, he was everyone's favorite to make the team as the third running back and not McIntosh, but McIntosh got the job, which made a lot more sense to me. But
McIntosh hadn't run a down in the NFL until
I'm just talking about what I'd seen in training camp in the preseason. Everyone was like, "Oh, Holani's a lock. He's made this team. He's been," and I'm like, I didn't see that. I didn't see that at all. McIntosh was the better player, but Holani was, he didn't make the team, but he was on the practice squad. He got called up later, got a few touches, not many. People really like him. The belief is that, he had the talent to be a mid-round draft pick, but he was always hurt at Boise State, and that's why he went undrafted, is because it's injury, not talent. And I think people were kind of thinking that, and they were looking beyond the fact that McIntosh was just outplaying him. But the talent's there. He's got a very stable base. He's hard to tackle. He's got, a good pop when he's running. He can sudden changes of speed to get through holes and get by people. There's a lot to like with him, but we've never really seen it in a regular season game. It's going to be an interesting year for him, because he has to now not only pass McIntosh on the roster if he wants to make this team, but he's now got Damon Martinez that he's looking up at. And so, I mean, these are three guys, I think, competing for two spots, and they may be competing for one spot since the team wants to keep a fullback.
That's the question, isn't it? I want to have that conversation. The last guy I'll just mention in passing is Jacardia Wright, undrafted rookie free agent. They signed him right after the draft, so he was kind of a priority guy. He didn't just sign a couple weeks ago or a week ago. So they like him. 6 foot, 218, 460, 40, 36 vertical, 10-foot broad jump. When you go watch his tape, and I did just a little bit before the show, he's tough to tackle, breaks a lot of tackles, nice jump cut. By the way, receiving skills out of the backfield, had a lot of receptions out of the backfield, hard to bring down, always fighting for the extra yard. That's what I wrote in my notes. So that's just kind of an interesting mix. He looks bigger than he measures. 6 foot, 218. He looked like he was almost 6'1" and about 225. He just had this kind of build and fight to him that showed that he played a little bigger. So it's just another guy in the mix. Wouldn't surprise me if he hangs around the practice squad based on his skill set. So let's talk about the roster construction for a minute. And we talk about how many running backs are you going to carry? How many wide receivers? How many tight ends? Now we've got a fullback. Does that mean we carry less linemen? We're going to carry 3 quarterbacks. If you believe that Jalen Milroe is not ready to take a snap in the NFL, that means Drew Lock's on the roster as a lock.
As the backup,
But Jalen Milroe will not go through being cut, and somebody will
God, no.
grab him in a heartbeat. So there's 3 quarterbacks on the roster. One fullback could be that fullback could be a tight end as well, like the third tight end.
Yes, and so that's one of the things that you look at with the roster construction is, teams typically carry 2 quarterbacks. They have the third sitting on the practice squad if they need them, and they typically most teams don't have a fullback because it's a why carry one in today's NFL kind of situation. But Seattle wants one for their scheme and to have that power element to it. But those are 2 places where you have to take someone else off the roster. Typically, you're going to see that there will guaranteed to be no 4th tight end. There might not be a 6th wide receiver. There might not be a 9th offensive lineman, which I would hate to see. I do not like it when teams carry 9. They don't need to carry 10. Some people say that, they should always carry 10. 9 seems to be the sweet spot for me, but 8 is dangerous.
And there might not be like a third off the ball linebacker. I mean, they may turn and rob a spot off the defense. You may end up carrying 27 offensive position players and 23 defensive position players.
No, you can't do that.
I know, right? You
can't cut 2 players.
It's about
off the
getting
defense.
guys to the practice squad and at least having them available on game day to go grab. It's going to be challenging. Like building this roster will be, for the very first time, difficult to predict and challenging to construct in a way that protects the players as well as make sure that we don't have a weak link on game day, because it's going to be like that.
Yeah. I would say that you look at the talent on Seattle's roster, and 3 tight ends feels like a guarantee.
Well, it does, but also a luxury in a sense, that if you have 3 tight ends, you're only going to carry 3 running backs. Like you're going to carry on the roster 3 running backs. Like there's going to be 1 or 2 running backs here that are going to get cut that could be picked off.
But who are you going to let go tight end? Certainly not your rookie.
Well, you're going to have to
certainly
either
not
try to
Barner.
trade you're going to trade or release Noah Fant.
I don't see it. I don't see it.
I don't see it either, but what other option do they have? You're not getting rid of AJ Barner. You're not getting rid of Arroyo.
Mm-hmm.
That leaves Noah Fant.
Yeah,
as the guy,
and that's why I don't think it happens.
You replace Noah Fant with Robbie Oots or Brady Russell. One of the 2 is going to win that fullback job, their primary job, but they're also going to be that third tight end that comes in and blocks and does all the things that tight end could do as well. So I think they carry 2 tight ends on the roster.
No, I think they carry 3 because of the names and because of the talent.
Where are they else? Are they going to cut? So you mentioned, I hate to see them go down to 8 offensive linemen, but that's what you're saying. And then wide receivers, you're saying, okay, we're going to carry 4 instead of 5. We carried 6 or 7 last year.
Yeah, I think they're going to carry 5. And you're going to lose there, and you're going to lose at running back. I think that's where it ends up being, because the only option is that you get rid of Fant, but Fant is your best receiving option.
It's not the only option. They could carry 1 less defensive lineman, 1 less inside linebacker, 1 less safety, for example. I'm saying what I'm saying is I think they go rob at 1 spot from the defense and carry a heavier offense total.
Yeah, it's possible.
Because it's just almost impossible. You've literally got 2 players you didn't have to account for last year that are mandatory on this roster now. Jalen Milroe and Robbie Oots or Brady Russell. Unless you're going to cut those guys, keep them on the practice squad and bring them up on game day alternating, and or have somebody else cut.
Mm-hmm.
So
So you do the math. 3 quarterbacks, 3 running backs, 3 tight ends, 9 offensive linemen, 5 wide receivers. That's 23. That means there's 2 more spots. So you could keep
Did you say 4 wide
4
receivers?
5.
Okay.
3, 3, 3, 9, that's 18, and 5 is 23. You still have 2 spots. And your fullback's going to be one of them. So that gives you 24. So now you've got a 25th spot. You've got 1 spot on your roster for um,
A 6th wide receiver, a 4th running back, or a 3rd tight end.
no, I already have 3 tight ends.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So you have, yeah.
Or another offensive lineman, which we probably would do.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I got 9 offensive linemen on there, so there's more flexibility, I think, there than we think. My guess is that it's probably the 6th wide receiver because that's where the 6 tend to carry one. But honestly, because it'd have 3 running backs and a fullback, so you're probably not keeping another running back there. Certainly not going to keep a 4th tight end, which they've done in the past, but not this year and not with the talent on the roster. So yeah, they could either keep a 10th offensive lineman or a 6th wide receiver, and that's with having a fullback and having a 3rd quarterback on the roster. So it's all possible.
Okay. Excuse me. So if they go with 3 running backs, which 3 are you keeping on the roster without seeing them in training camp?
Obviously, Walker and Charbonnet. And
Yes.
I'm probably keeping Damian Martinez because of cost and team control. McIntosh is a nice piece, but he's going into year 3. And so he's also going to be a restricted free agent after this year.
And I think he can make it to the practice squad, to be completely honest. There's too many running backs in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I think he can clear waivers and be part of that.
Yeah. And I'd rather have the team control of Martinez because
and he's got a higher upside.
He's does.
Cheaper for longer and a higher upside.
Mm-hmm. So to me, I would keep him. And honestly, Halani made it to the practice squad last year, so why would he not make it to the practice squad this year? And the this year's undrafted rookie is a slower version of Martinez. I don't see him as being someone that's going to compete for a roster spot. So
he's not that slow. He ran a 4.640. That's not too bad. I mean, Martinez was what, a 4.5?
4.5, yeah.
So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
And Chris Carson was a 4.7. So we know that you can be successful at that. But he's a slower version of Damian Martinez. And
I did see a lot to like on highlights. I didn't watch any deep dive film analysis on him, but just a highlight package on the internet, on YouTube, showed me that he does have a little bit of stuff, and the fight and the grit that he showed just on play after play at the goal line, just fighting for that extra yard, breaking tackles, all that, jumping over defenders, all that stuff. He's just kind of an interesting player to watch. To keep around on the practice squad, obviously, but a guy that could eventually work into forcing his way onto the roster as a special teams guy and a 3rd running back if they don't elect to re-sign Ken Walker after this season, and then Kenny McIntyre or Zach Charbonnet would be on a contract year next year, and so just some things to watch.
Yeah.
I like the room. I think that this is going to be successful this year with this scheme, with this commitment to run this. I don't know if any one running back will reach fantasy numbers and knock it out of the park as far as that is concerned. But I think as a group, they're very solid and they complement each other. And
it's very deep. It's a very deep room.
Right. And if Ken Walker stays healthy, and that's a big if, it's an asterisk on this thing, but if he stays healthy, he's got an opportunity, I think, because I don't think that Clint Kubiak has had such a deep room before to have control over, but he has shown that he does favor a running back in a scheme and kind of rides him a little bit. And he's got a propensity to stick with something until it's broken. Whoever's kind of got the hot hand sort of a thing. And it's usually their feature back. And so Ken Walker's got that ability. He's got that scheme diversity where he can do some gap stuff. He can do the outside zone. He can receive out of the backfield. I see him getting the bulk of the carries to, unfortunately for Charbonnet, because just the way things tend to work in these sorts of things. But
and if you see that, then you should also foresee Ken Walker missing some games and Charbonnet getting his touches as the feature back in those games. So
right.
It'll work itself out. The one caveat to this room and all the stuff that we've talked about is, can the offensive line block for them? Because they were awful last year, right up the middle.
Yeah, and Gray Zabel had an 86.9% blocking grade in college. I'm not worried about him being able to block. In fact, he's a much better blocker entering the league than he is a pass blocker. And I'm not worried about him pass blocking either. He's got such a great feel for it already. But that left side is going to be interesting to me. I think if you go watch tape on Clint Kubiak, he runs a lot of stuff to the right. He's really kind of, usually they've got a good right tackle, left guard to run behind. And we will, especially if it's Bradford that ends up holding down the fort there at that right guard. I think he would be a good right guard combo with Lucas if you're going to run power off the right side.
Yeah, if you're going to run power, if you're going to run gap stuff
but they do
forward,
like 40% of the time.
But that's not the bread and butter of the scheme. You don't pick players for that, because
I agree.
You better have some lateral agility and the ability to drive people wide, and he can't do that.
What I'm saying though is I believe that the offensive line can be at least league average in this scheme. And even if it's Bradford, I'm saying I believe Haynes is going to win that job. I just do. But I'm saying the floor is Bradford.
I don't think Bradford
right guard, and I think he's a decent run blocker, and your running game is not going to suffer because he's there necessarily.
It will suffer if he's there, because he's a decent run blocker if you put him in a phone booth.
Yeah, but you had a 63 point whatever grade and Pro Football Focus. I'm not saying Pro Football Focus is great.
And that was when he was asked to block in a phone booth. He was barely above average. Now you're going to ask him to do something which is way outside his skill set. And no, Lumea has a better shot at winning the job than Bradford does. I agree. I think it's Haynes. But I am concerned that the Kubiak is a very right-handed offense, and that's common. A lot of NFL offenses are right-handed. You put the tight end on the right side, you protect your right tackle, you run to the right because that's where you have your better run blocking tackle, and that's where your tight end is. It's a very right-handed setup, and you're running in the direction of your weakest offensive line spot, which is your right guard. And so there's a chance that there's going to be a bunch of plays that are blown up in the backfield because your right guard can't hold up at the point of attack, and that's
or get out to be problematic in time. Yeah.
Yep.
I agree. This is a process. I mean, it really is. We're excited about, I think, the opportunity, and I think as time goes on in the offense during the year, we get better. But it is a first year scheme. It's there's new players, there's new coaches, there's new language, all the stuff is different. So, that part will be interesting and something to monitor, but I think I think it's, the base, the floor for me is at least as good as we were last year at our best. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, because last year at our best, we were still pretty bad.
Right.
And so that's not a high bar to get over. And I do think that just a competent scheme plus great Zabel, puts you in a spot where you're going to be better. No matter what you do, you're going to be better.
In the last 4 or 5 games where Charbonnet was the lead back, we weren't bad at running the ball. We just didn't run with a lot of frequency. But when we did run, and Charbonnet had that breakout game against Arizona. I watched that game in person. It was fantastic. Like, that game was really solid for the run game, the blend, everything was working. And then they never went back to it again.
Yeah, that's Ryan Krebs.
But the opportunity, I think, for the offensive line, though, is decent. I mean, that was a decent defensive front for the Cardinals, and we were able to kind of win those battles towards the end of last season. And it'll be interesting to see how it all works out. I'm fascinated to see how this works, because we had talked about no correlation. So when you bring an offensive, coaching staff in, a new scheme, a new language, and all the whole thing, it's like, what is the potential? I think the potential is pretty high, but are we going to be there on day one? Probably not. But by week 8, man, we could be dialed.
I mean, are we going to be there week 1? I wouldn't expect it to be. You're depending a lot on a rookie left guard, a right guard who's probably making his first starts, and Christian Haynes, maybe Lumea, but he only had 5 or 6 last year. 4, I think maybe it was 4. Right. So you're talking about guards that don't have a lot of experience at all, that are also learning the NFL on top of learning, the scheme and everything. I think that there's a lot of reasons to be like, this is going to be an unfinished product week 1, and that it's going to continue to get better throughout the season as they become more proficient in everything that they do. And I think that is one of those things that we have to be prepared for. Like,
does that give you pause to face the San Francisco 49ers and Selah as the defensive coordinator in the very first game?
A little bit, but at the same time, like, do the 49ers they don't have the defensive talent that they've had in the back. Who's going to play Who's going to play freaking linebacker for them? Right? Their linebackers are all gone. Their defensive line is lost a whole bunch of talent. 2 out of the 3 starters. It's let's figure out who the 49ers are before we worry about the 49ers, because right now they lost so many of the pieces that made that defense formidable. And we'll see. Selah is a great coach. Not going to say otherwise. He's a fantastic coach, and him being back in San Francisco sucks for the rest of the AFC West.
It'll be very interesting to me what they look like the first week versus playing them the last week of the season.
Yeah, I am intrigued. This is going to be an interesting year in the NFC West, because you look at Arizona's defense last year, and they were historically bad for the first 6 weeks. But then those, they relied on a lot of rookie talent. And those guys were really slow to come on. But once they did, like, Jared Verse was unstoppable. Kitchens on the back end looked awful the first 3 games, and then really got it figured out. So, and they were a really good defensive team down the stretch. So now they're coming into year 2. They've added some pieces. It's going to be, that is a good team. It's young, but it's a good team. And then Arizona, can they ever put together a year? I don't know.
Sure, a lot of talk about it being a special season now. It's so early, and you hear those words about them, and you're just like, But
every year,
there's a certain vibe and a certain confidence that's kind of coming out, and based on their head coach and the way that they're coached, and they're bought into the program and what they've added as far as talent, and the future seems bright. I just think they need to move somehow off Kyler Murray in order to reach their full potential. But it's a team to worry about, like all the teams. Like 49ers could bounce and have a decent year. Obviously, the Rams, the Seahawks are emerging, coming on, ascending. This could
national media thinks the 49ers aren't going to emerge. They consider them emerged, and I'm still baffled. as to
They're
why.
well coached. I mean,
Oh, they
teams
are. They're
like the
fantastically coached.
49ers with John Lynch there at the GM spot and the Kyle Shanahan, they don't go away. Like, it's one of those things where it's like the Seahawks franchise. It's like the Seahawks have been rebuilt and reconfigured like a lot. I mean, we're a completely different roster since 2021. But we've been able to stay competitive. I think the 49ers are kind of in that. It's like, it's hard to discount them at all because they're so well coached and they've got a quarterback that really takes care of the ball and does a good job. Anytime you have that combo, and then they've got a defense that, yeah, it's in transition, but you're well coached. It's not like you don't have talent. And so it's just one of those things. And so I think there easily could be 3 teams out of this division that go into the playoffs.
Yeah, it's possible. It's also possible that they beat up on each other, and because it's so hard to win games in the division, and nobody wins a lot of games in the division because they're all good. They beat up on each other, and then teams from crappy divisions that have some really easy games that the Seahawks don't have are the teams that end up with enough wins to get in. So pure talent and pure like quality wise, yes, the NFC West is worthy of having 3 teams in the playoffs.
All right, let's get out of here. Next show, we'll either do wide receivers or tight ends. I'll leave that up to you. And we can meet back here midweek and put down a couple of additional shows for you. Give us a listen if you're, or give us a subscription. If you're listening on a podcast, find us on your favorite podcast platform and make sure you like it. And then on our YouTube channel, leave us a comment. Love those. Make sure you subscribe. I think only about 35% of all our views come from our subscriptions. So we get new views all the time, new viewers. If you guys want to make sure that you don't miss any shows or opportunities to see what we put out, hit that subscribe button. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NWSeahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.